And then we have Jamie Brew. Jamie Brew is the CEO and co-founder of Botnik, which is a Seattle startup that makes creative texting editing tools for writers. He was also the previous writer and editor at The Onion and its sister site, Clickhole. Now, he does so much more with that startup. We're going to learn a lot about how he uses AI to build creative communities globally. Come on out, Jamie. And last but certainly not least, we have Ashley Baccus-Clark. I didn't butcher that right. Okay, she's the director of research, and you guys already know she was here earlier. You saw her, but as you know, she's the director of research at Hyphen-Labs, which is a molecular and cellular. She's also a molecular and cellular biologist and multidisciplinary artist who uses new media and storytelling to explore themes of deep learning, cognition, memory, race, trauma, and systems of belief. God, what an incredible life. Come on out here, girl. Couldn't even get out. All right, awesome. Okay, so. Okay.
Marc's just grabbing water.
Oh, I was going to say, what's going on here?
He decided that he got cold feet.
Yeah, we didn't even start. We got cold feet. No, so this is a big topic, and I kind of wanted to narrow it down. And first of all, make it more conversational. And the fact that the three of you have such, I mean, you all are in the creative space, but in such different ways. I really first and foremost want to sort of understand sort of from your, since we talked earlier about cultural assumptions, not cultural assumptions, but just assumptions in general that we hear about the technologies, about innovation. From your perspective and what you do, can you first of all tell us what you do? Because that's, you all are doing such very different, like, cutting edge things that I wonder how you even define it to your family and friends and people you don't know. So could you tell us that? And then also tell us sort of some of the assumptions that you hear from people about what they, about what you do that you'd like to clear up. Right? So, go ahead, Jake.
Yeah. So at Botnik, we make tools designed for writers, language tools for copywriters usually. And I think an assumption that comes anytime you say you're building a tool is that the goal of that tool must be to make the writing better in like some objective, there's good writing and bad writing, and we're going to make it better writing. And I think that makes things one-dimensional when they don't need to be. So one thing Husani in his workshop earlier talked about was data and the fact that all data has bias naturally. That's okay if you know what bias you're using and if you're using it with a purpose. So I think an assumption that I'd like to challenge is tools don't need to make writing objectively better. They can make it more specific and push it in a direction as long as that's transparent to the person who's using it.
Great. So I work for Havas, which is a largish global marketing communications network. It's about 20,000 people. It's sort of the smallest of the big networks. And by and large, it's a pretty traditional comms-based, comms-focused network. We still make more than half of our revenue from what we consider traditional communications, telling stories, right? And then the other half, sort of a patchwork of all sorts of different digital stuff. And we have like pockets of excellence where we do really advanced sort of like, all the emerging tech stuff and AI-based stuff. But it's still just pockets, right? It's not really, it hasn't really sort of pervaded the entire network. And the biggest assumption that I'm finding myself, sort of fighting and advocating against, both internally and externally, is this idea that marketing is all about making people want things, right? That's the prevailing sort of, premise. It's like, get a brief that gives you ammo as a creative to tell a good story that makes people want the brand in some way. And what's happening is that the industry is kind of like shifting underneath us to where what actually makes people want to buy your stuff and then talk about it to their friends is if you as a brand are able to provide some sort of valuable experience. So basically making stuff people want instead of making people want things. And that's a huge mental shift. And like at the most senior executive levels of both our organization and most of our client organizations, it's so entrenched that it's just really hard to get through because the ways you get to doing stuff people want are very, very different from the ways you get to making people want things, right? Like all the research, all the insights, all the upfront work that you do, the strategy that you do to get to the point where you can tell a good story is totally different from the stuff you need to do to actually figure out something that people need and want to interact with in service of creating a better connection with the brand. So that's kind of my biggest assumption that I'm working on.
Yeah, well, I spend a lot of time writing these days, thinking about storytelling and how to use technology in a way that's not just showing off what the technology can do, but to really be thoughtful about, the technology that fits the story that we're trying to tell. So, what director of research is trying to do what we want to do outside of academia and building a research framework around that and showing that, you can ask these types of questions and do rigorous research at a collective, which we are. We're an art collective in practice. We work with missing pieces and do a lot of cool commercial projects, but our practice really is about being provocative and challenging our audience. So, you said making assumptions about what we do. Like if you ask my mom what I did, she would be like, I don't know, but but it looks cool and you get to talk to people, so that's great. And also, we spend a lot of time trying to be visible for youth that are coming up and showing them this is a viable field for you to get into. You don't have to go these traditional routes of success. I started my career as a research scientist in lab, and now I'm doing something much different. So just because you start your trajectory one way doesn't mean that you're not going to stop pivoting until it looks completely different than what you started with.
A lot of when we spoke the other night, the work that you do with regards to, your most recent project, which I think is really fascinating, is that you ask people to accept an altered reality, right? That they're not necessarily comfortable with, or maybe they are or they're not, but they're probably usually surprised by that to some degree. Going back to your point, Marc, the idea that people don't know what they want. You have to show them sort of what they want, which is what the technology kind of helps us to do, but then you have to convince them that it might be good for them, or you have to at the very least know what to do with that experience once they have it. And I think that becomes really clear with VR when you take people in this immersive environment and then pull them out of it. So once you take me in there and you show me what it's like to be a black woman, I already know, by the way. It's awesome. What do you do with that experience? And honestly, this is something that can translate into companies and what we do when we ask people to look at how these technologies challenge the way that we think. So you've challenged me, now what?
So the other day on the phone, we were talking about memory implantation.
Yes,
right?
we were.
And so our memories and, imagination around what it means to be a black person or a person of color in this country has been controlled not by us. And so we wanted to flip that narrative on its head and use an immersive technology where we could challenge people's ideas and conceptions about what it means to be a black woman and the things that we can do in the industries that we can be a part of and the contributions, and build a story around that. And so, yeah, it's taking reality and flipping it on its head, but it's also not so far off. It's just we're world building, and we're using the language of Afrofuturism, taking Sun Ra and infusing it with music and art and all in literature that really kind of triangulates the black experience in the US, which now is a global experience because blackness is transnational and the commodification of blackness is transnational. So we created this platform where we can have all of these different types of conversations and not have it be around, just thinking about black death and black pain. It's about empowerment and recontextualizing these narratives.
So you bring up a really good point that I'd like to actually continue with you, Jamie, because with regards to the community that you're building, you have a global community, pretty much. I mean, I reached out to Jamie with regards to him speaking at Tech2025. He's actually doing a workshop with us in a week. And the reason why is because, you have this global community that's, I don't want to say it's not based on AI. I mean, you guys, you experiment with the technology, but it's so much more than that, right? So from the creative standpoint, you have artists, writers who have never used this technology before, really, not the way that you're asking them to. So what is it that you're learning from them and their process of discovery and experimentation with AI that you think creatives and agencies should know that would help them?
I think it's a really good transition from Ash's work, because I think one of the greatest things about it is that it's using technology not to optimize some experience or saying like this is the best content we could possibly make. It's giving you a really specific experience and saying we're using this powerful technology to put you in a really specific place, in a really specific mind. And I think that translates directly to any technology that we build. We usually build for writers and for people who aren't necessarily they're not necessarily techies. And it's not that we're uniting the best minds and the best technology to create like the perfect sentence or the perfect paragraph. It's each writer has a specific viewpoint, and we want to create an interface that's flexible enough that each person who interacts with it will find a different thing to do with it.
Yeah.
And so our main product that we've used in the last 2 years is a predictive keyboard that can be trained on any specific source material. So instead of trying to do the Google thing of let's predict the best next word in any text or email, you can say, here's the song or here's a book, and we want to get the next best continuations of the sentence in that specific context. So I would say it's the specificity that comes from that global community. It's like each specific person.
They have their own, like they're able to shine in their own way. Is that what it is?
Everyone uses the tool in a different way. So it's not as if the grand project is making the best thing. It's
Right.
making many specific things.
See, I find that fascinating. I wonder, by the way, if you, Marc, are seeing that from your perspective in agencies and the tools that you use.
Yeah, very much so.
That sense of wonder and that ability for each person to take it and make it their own. I mean, is that...
Yeah. I mean, so you were talking about basically using technology to make, an experience transparent and highly personalized and, immersive and engaging and so forth. And of course, we want to do that every time we build an experience for our clients and partners. But what we've actually been spending a lot of time on internally is making all these new technologies, sort of pre-digesting them and making them accessible to all of our content creators and all of our creatives internally. Because what we found is that, there's a lot of people who are incredibly creative, who have this sort of fluid creativity that's able to sort of mix and match different concepts and different media and sort of like create new art, new experiences using all these different techniques. But when it comes to technology, it's like really daunting because it's very abstract. It has its own language, its own terminology. Like you have to understand all these foundational things about, the API economy and cloud and all that stuff to even be able to manipulate these creative technologies as kind of creative building blocks.
Right.
So what we did is we built this, it's basically a combination of an ideation workshop method that's sort of a technology first, sort of creative technology ideation process. And it's literally an inventory of all the current and sort of near future technologies that are available today. And it's literally a card deck. So it's like a deck of cards that's sort of used as a prompt or stimuli during the workshop so that people who are not super tech nerdy like I am and a few others at Havas are able to manipulate the technologies in the same creative way that we do all day long, just because we're nerds and that's what we like to do. So you can literally pick up the VR card and put it together with the cooperative interaction dynamic and have it fed by this data source over here, and you can create these like new product ideas and service design ideas using these things as basically firepower and building blocks.
Awesome. And what kind of feedback are you getting from the non-techies about that?
Well, they love it because it's empowering. Like before that was available, they basically had to come to us. They were sort of beholden to us when they needed sort of like something that required a bunch of tech to make it work. So either they were just like, very open to it and wanted to learn, but it wasn't their sweet spot. So it took a lot of like heavy lifting, or they were threatened by it, which is even worse because now it's like a whole a wasted mind, right? A wasted talent who's
Right.
not accessing all these things that are actually fairly easy to work with.
Right.
So it's been great. We've done it with lots and lots of client engagements as well, where we believe that you know, you really have to work with clients together, co-create these product and service ideas, because they know their business much, much better than you ever will as an agency partner. And they really need that sort of tech support that we can provide in that way. So, and it's been successful so far.
That's really a great, I mean, I think the three of you are actually really hitting on something that's very important with regards to helping employees to drop any kind of defenses that we all naturally have. We all have them to some degree about the technologies. And that's that, you know, in order to do that, you know, usually when you want to get someone to drop their defenses, you charm them. Oh, you charm them. Okay, and it doesn't take much, just a little touch, right? So it seems to me like what's missing from the technology, from AI especially, which is like been demonized through every kind of medium you can think of, is that it's not charming. You know, it doesn't woo us, it doesn't really kind of tickle. I mean, if you're a technologist, yes, right? If you're used to it, if you love building the technologies, okay. But, you know, when you think about Steve Jobs, if you think about the iPhone, you know, that was an elegant sort of, it took us a little higher in our aspirations, and that doesn't seem to be the feeling that we have now with technologies in companies. And so my question to you is, because what I don't hear when I hear the description of AI and the tools that you guys are building in companies is I don't hear joy, I don't hear happy, I don't hear like the positive adjectives that we can use. So are we missing sort of like the arts? Because you guys are very artistic, right? So is it that we are missing the art in helping people to understand, you know, and embrace the creative aspect of the technologies, which is ironic because they're creative, right? I mean, is that?
I think part of it might be that we get distracted by sci-fi and by like the scary side of AI that's like jumps to mind quicker. That when we think AI, one of the ways to make that appealing or to make that jump off the page is to say like, it's the machine doing it all on its own. And it's a powerful system that has the potential to replace people. And like you almost go down this path of like, I know what trope I'm in now, and it sticks better as a story if I tell a story about powerful, super intelligent AI, when really, Husani put it best, I think. It's just math intelligently applied, and I think it would be better for us if we thought about AI tools more as tools that we use than as agents that are going to sort of live alongside us or replace us.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I mean, I think it's important to demystify these technologies for the public. I brought this up here because it's called The People's Guide to AI. And it's like a really good zine about, you know, what is machine learning, like breaking it down. Here's some worksheets. Do you know how these technologies are intersecting with your life? And I think once that demystification process is over, then people can start thinking creatively about how to use them and how to build with them. And I don't see a lot of that going on. Like, to be honest, like the most exciting use of AI that I've seen right now are music videos. You know, like doing style transfers. Like, that's so cool. Like, you know, people who, I don't know, I think musicians and other creatives are showing us how to have fun with these technologies and not just see the demonized side of like, okay, these algorithms are going to take over our future. Like, yeah, there's that side of it too, but then there's the side of like, let's see what we can do to work with these technologies.
Right, which is great. So this is a good point because I reached out to you regarding we did a workshop at Tech2025 on manifestos, the manifestos of tech companies specifically, and with regards to ethics, which we aren't going to be able to get into on this panel. That's a big part of this puzzle because there's also very much a lot of concern, rightfully so, about the ethics of AI and how employees are thinking about that and having conversations about the stuff that we don't usually have, at least publicly. So to that end, I'm going to actually introduce something that you did for us, right? I enlisted Jamie to do a project based on the manifesto workshop that we did at Tech 2025. So first though, I'm going to read this. Can you guys sort of get ready to cue it up? So first, I'm going to read a quote from you. I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I'm going to do it. Okay.
What a betrayal of my trust.
Okay, so this is a quote that I think is really relevant right now. And you said at some point, we want to show the world an emerging kind of machine-human creative collaboration that brings us great joy and that we believe can do the same for billions of others. We use machines to enable new kind of human creativity. Our community of coders, comedy writers, and ordinary citizens working together to explore the wilds of human collaboration, human-machine collaboration, which is really important. Do you remember saying that?
It sounds familiar. Yeah. I
Oh
think
my
it's
God. This is like a Barbara Walters
Well
moment.
put.
Okay,
Really
so
nice.
he said this, right? And one of the things that stuck out is, again, talking about the joy of creating and the joy of using these tools to create. So we asked you to take, to do what you do with your tools and to create a manifesto, a tech manifesto based on existing text that was created 100% by AI, correct? So can you explain it before we get it up? Okay.
I love this assignment because it's asking us to take the words that are used in like the most high profile like company yearly big update emails
Right.
from like Jeff Bezos.
Exactly.
Satya Nadella,
Which was the workshop, so that was, yeah.
and so these companies who are promising optimization and who are promising like we're going to make you better and everything better.
Yeah.
To take that and then use it in this really specific way. So what we did was trained a version of this predictive text keyboard on this collection of speeches. So as we go through writing like you would on your phone with the suggestions from the predictive text bar, we're getting only suggestions that would come next in a sentence from these manifestos by the company leaders.
Right.
And so the flow is the interface suggests a range of words, and I choose one of those words, and then it suggests words to come after that and
Which is
repeat
fun.
in this human-machine loop. And so we've written a letter from a CEO to employees, and
Of
we're
a
going to
tech
read
company of the future, right? You guys have it up? Oh, okay. So this is what the algorithm came up with. The manifesto of a tech company.
it. The best possible email you
The
could write.
best possible email you can write.
Okay, shall I read it?
Yeah.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
Employees and more. Our goal is to try my new ideas and achieve more than 100% of our original goals. This is not without risk or crime, but it is generating satisfaction, and we believe it will provide us with unbelievable opportunities for survival. As always, I am reminded of my favorite saying about technology. Courage is challenging many technologies by putting customers in the middle of the car. That is an incredible philosophy for all of us. Thank you for being generated by interactions among people. CEO. Thanks.
Awesome. That was awesome. So, I mean, that was okay. Do you guys know why we did that? I mean, do you want to tell us?
Well, I think it's putting the lie to the idea that you can optimize language. If you take these building blocks of 2 or 3 word phrases and then just throw them together, but yet you sort of get the tone of one of these emails, and maybe it reveals that on some level an email like that isn't really more than the sum of the buzzwords that make it up. But in another way, it's like that's plainly deranged, and we can't just trust words that come out of a suggestion algorithm to do the thing that we want them to do. There is the fact that I was guiding that is the reason it turned out so badly.
I thought it was good, actually. Would you choose that or Mark Zuckerberg's manifesto? Okay, so but here's a question that I have, and this is just something we talked about this last night at our meeting. And Chick, I'm gonna just go ahead. I don't want to call you out, but you mentioned that you read this, a longer version of this, and you shared it, with some friends and colleagues and everything. And you guys, like what you just did, laughed about it and had a great time about it. But the idea that the technologies can be presented in a way you can use tools to do that, just even in organizations, to make it fun and make it exciting. But I would love to know sort of what your thoughts are regarding something like this. Do you think that companies need to find ways to engage employees in a more sort of grounded way that's sort of fun and gets them to explore? The whole point of this is to explore the technologies organically. How do you do that?
Well, yes, you do, I think, absolutely. And I think a lot of what people are calling today sort of design-led and purpose-led organizations are like tapping into that, into the need for people to express themselves and have a real sort of connection to the company, what it stands for, beyond just benefits and pay and what the company does in the market. I mean, most of an employee's interactions with a company today are with, you know, their immediate, like maybe 10 people that they work with every day, and then everything else is basically crappy software, right? It's like the crappy, benefits management system and the crappy time reporting system, and if it's a large company. If you work for a smaller company, you're lucky because you're using Slack, and that's awesome. You know, other tools like that. So, you know, in my company, it's a creative network, so it sort of selects for people who are good at expressing themselves and good at being creative, so it's less of an issue. But I imagine, like, if I walk around in some of the companies that we have as clients, you know, it's kind of very staid, and people don't have a lot of avenues to express themselves. And yet, when you engage them in these sort of collaborative, co-creation processes, like when we run these kinds of workshops, these ideation workshops I was talking about, it's like the best time our clients have had in 3 months. They're so delighted and so open and so collaborative. Like, so everybody has that in them. It's just companies don't typically do a good job at sort of eliciting that from their employees.
So in a sense, you kind of have to show them by doing it with them, and then hope that they take it to the next step. And I just have one more question for you regarding, this is more or less about data. With regards to clients, how do you strike the balance between showing clients what's possible with the technologies, but keeping them mindful of the fact that just because it's possible doesn't mean you should do it?
Yeah, that's, so I actually have a term for that called the container fallacy. It's sort of like, it's the typical client brief where it's like, build me an X, where X is a VR experience, an app, a website, whatever. And they sort of mistake the container, the mechanism for delivering the experience, with the actual substance of the experience. So they'll say, build me an app. But it's like, well, maybe it's an app, but maybe not. Maybe it's like it's web. Maybe it's like something totally different. It's like, what's the outcome you're trying to drive to, and then we'll figure out how to get there.
You mentioned, Ashley, this is for you, but this is kind of piggybacking off of our conversation yesterday, where you Marc mentioned that the fact that you get clients to understand what they can't or shouldn't do, or might want to think about by asking them to replace the technology with the human.
Yes, that's right. I remember
Right.
now. Yeah.
Now,
So this is there's a small group at Havas that I helped launch a few years ago called Havas Cognitive, where we're basically tapping into all these like emerging technologies, and including AI services, to build hopefully more valuable, more engaging experiences for clients. A lot of them based on sort of like highly personalized experiences, because we can know stuff about individual users who interact with them versus just designing for personas or larger groups of people. So the experience will literally adapt itself to the individual who's coming to it. And that's very powerful, but it's like it's very easy to cross the line into unethical behavior, right? So if you're trolling somebody's social feed and deriving a personality profile about an individual, and maybe like what sports they like by analyzing their photography, and what colors they like by analyzing what they wear, and like all this other stuff, and then you deliver a personalized experience. If it's like for some clothes, it's fine. But if you if you infer from the personality profile that person is depressed, and so therefore they might be more open to an ad about like an antidepressant, that's kind of creepy, right? And we have no good ethical guidelines right now in the marketing industry. I mean, we have regulations, we have GDPR, but we don't really have good internal sort of self-regulation around that. So in the meantime, before we get there, what I've been telling all of our designers is like, when you start manipulating these very powerful technologies to build cool stuff, try to find the human analogy of that thing you're trying to build. And if it would be creepy for humans to do it to each other, it's probably going to be just as creepy, if not more so, by having AI do it, right?
Sure.
So that's sort of the rule of thumb in the absence of a true sort of ethical framework for now.
It's a beginning. It's a strong beginning. And I mean, Ashley, this points to you. This is from your website, which I love this. I mean, it's through our global vision and unique perspectives, we are driven to create meaningful and engaging ways to explore emotional, human-centered, and speculative design. So going back to that point of sort of, it seems a little counterintuitive, because we want to emphasize human-centered design, but we are actually developing technologies that's taking the human out of, So how would you define human-centered design based on what you've experienced, watching people engage with the technologies, especially because you use very immersive technologies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how would you define human-centered, or how would you help creative people and agencies to sort of think about human-centered design?
Well, just that, keeping the human in it. When you're creating an experience, if it's immersive, if it's web-based or whatever, it's always bringing it back to the people that you're creating it for. And so when we make something, we're making sure to put together a focus group or put together our network and say, if you were to use this technology, how does it feel? What would you change? How would you use it? And I don't, it goes back to what you were saying about just because you can make something, should you? And so if we're going to continue to track this evolution of what these technologies can do in a sustainable way, in a way that makes it so we don't have to go towards this more dystopian future. We're going to have to involve like a wide demographic of people in the building of it. And that's what we do well because, just here in New York, we have tried to get into so many creative communities and to work with companies, to work with universities, just kind of work across the spectrum and figure out how to become a translator of that. So, I'm based here, Carmen and Edjay are based in London. We have networks in Barcelona, in Germany, just like all of these different places where people are starting to have these conversations more about a reckoning, especially not only with colonialism, but like just what we've done to our planet. And so, making sure that in this cybernetic or transhuman looking towards that, we're not actually taking the humanity out of those equations.
I love that. Yeah, thank you so much. Do we have time for a question, or is it, no, we're tight? Oh, guys, don't hate me, I'm so sorry. If they're gonna be here, though, don't beat me. So anyway, thank you so much, Ashley, Marc, Mr. Manifesto Man, Jamie. Okay, thank you guys for a great discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. God, yeah, I love you.